We have today Ami Horowitz. He's a 47-year-old father of two, born to an Israeli mom and raised in Los Angeles. Ami graduated from USC with a major in political science and philosophy. After graduating from USC, Ami managed a Democratic candidate's campaign for state controller of Maryland. He then took advice from the same candidate that he should make money first and go into politics later. He moved into investment banking and spent over a decade working successfully in that field. After more than 10 years as an investment banker, he decided to follow his true calling and become a filmmaker. Despite having absolutely zero filmmaking experience, Ami dove in headfirst, immersing himself into being a writer, producer, and director. Over the last 10 years, Ami has produced very highly regarded film, You and Me, a documentary film about the United Nations. The New York Times called You and Me a sassy documentary that suggests that the United Nations is doing more harm than good. Ami's edgy and powerful YouTube and Facebook videos have garnered over 100 million views around the world and have affected global change. Ami on the Streets, a humorous short film series made for Fox News, are mine and Karen's favorite. Welcome, Ami, to our show. I'm so happy that you're here.
It's my pleasure, Yentas. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome, Ami, to Yentas in the City. Etty and I are the presidents of your fan club. We love your YouTube documentaries. They're amazing.
That's very sweet. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Amazing. We've heard a lot about the migrant caravan on the news. In one of your documentaries, you actually went to Oaxaca, Mexico, filled with narco crime and poverty. In the narrative, you kept hearing the migrant. In the narrative, you actually kept hearing by the migrants that there was no mention of violence, but just wanting to leave for a better life. You also believe that their exodus is organized and is funded by leftist groups. Can you elaborate a little more about your investigation?
Sure. What became clear to me when I first got down into southern Mexico was what we heard about the narrative or the story that you heard from the news, mainstream media, left-wing media, was not the reality of what I saw on the ground. So, for example, I'm gonna have to think back. This is a couple years ago now, but for example, one of the main things you would hear was that they were escaping violence, right? That we had to take the members of the caravan into our country because, frankly, they were running from oppression and from death. And what I found there wasn't that. That wasn't what I heard. That wasn't what the migrants themselves were telling me. They were telling me what you would typically hear from somebody who wants to move their station up in life. They were saying, hey, we want a better life for our families. We want education for our kids, want a chance at a better job, send money to our families. All things you and me would want out of life. What I didn't hear was we're running for our lives, and if we stay there, we're going to die. Now, oftentimes after I would interview with them, there were always their shadows. That throughout the entire trip of the caravan, you would see these guys and women, men and women in these black t-shirts in Puebla de Frontera, where they would basically walk around and guide these people. It's clear they were the ones managing this process. This was not a grassroots, hey, let's just get up and go. This was an organized effort paid for by somebody. This organization was behind it, and they would always, they would look at me or look at anybody with a camera kind of suspiciously, and they would always talk to the people afterwards to find out what I asked, what they said. They would then whisper in the ear, go back and tell them something a little bit different. It was clear.
Do you believe that this group, the People Without Borders, were actually training the migrants on how to speak to the press in order for them to get political asylum?
Yeah, no, I don't believe it. I know it. I mean, we saw them. We saw them being trained. And when you got to Mexico City, that PowerPoint presentations explaining to them what you need to say, what are the buzzwords when you get across to talk with the border officials on what would qualify you for asylum. So no, this is not belief. This was.
Was it more families or single people?
It was mostly single people, but there were definitely some families, but it was mostly single men.
Right.
That's the other narrative that you heard was it was all families, children, and that wasn't true. It was 80-90% single men.
You know, next time he does a documentary like that, Karen, you should go with him, be the translator.
Yes.
That
Oh
would
my
be
gosh.
helpful.
Let me tell you, every time we see a video of yours, we're like, oh, I want to be there with him.
I know. Etty and I would love to shadow you. I could just imagine being there. I speak fluent Spanish. I was imagining.
He's having a heart attack right now. I don't want two Yentas with me when it comes to situations like that.
Wow.
Ami, your video waving an ISIS flag and then an Israeli flag on UC Berkeley campus truly captured the biases against Israel. Unfortunately, your video is only a glimpse of what is going on in all the major campuses right now. As an Israeli Jewish American, that day you became one of our heroes, mine and Karen's. Really, I follow your work way back. You know, I watched You and Me. I like your work. I like your courage. And with anti-Semitism on the rise, and many of our colleges, like I have seniors, Karen has seniors, attending these colleges next year that attempt to brainwash and peer pressure them against Israel, and so they kind of hide their identity. What do you think the solution is for our coming generation attending those colleges? And how do we get our youth more involved? But before you answer the question, if you could tell the followers a little bit of what took place at UC Berkeley, because not everybody saw the video, and as well as the anti-Semitic growth coming from the left in our college campuses. For example, the conference that took place between Duke and University of North Carolina bashing Israel, which eventually that conference, I think, ended up setting a huge precedent. Can you elaborate on everything and tell me more about our children? How do you think we can?
I hope you took notes on the questions. That's a lot to unpack.
Yes. Right.
So I'll start with the Duke UNC conference. So
Okay.
You know, that's actually an interesting story. And so at the time I was sitting on the beach in Sydney, and I was kind of, you know, just kind of scrolling through Facebook and in Bondi Beach, and I just happened to see this post about an invitation to this conference it was a major Duke UNC conference on the campus of the University of North Carolina, and it was ostensibly about Gaza, which automatically means it's going to be anti-Israel. Now, the truth is, anti-Israel doesn't really animate me unfortunately that much, because there's so much of it on campus that we all know it, and it doesn't really move the needle. Everybody knows there's anti-Israel on campus. Like, you have to really do something big to expose anti-Israel to move the needle, because we all know every campus has that problem.
Absolutely.
I hate to say it, but it doesn't really move the needle for me. But for some reason, I was just drawn to that conference. For some reason, I said, look, because I get these invitations and these notices all the time, I usually don't go to them. But for some reason, I decided to go to it, and it was, you know, maybe it was from God that I did, because it really changed a lot after I went there. So I went to this conference. I had a hidden camera, and I was like, let me just film what's going on, and let me ask people questions. And I directed the questions not from, because everybody there was anti-Israel, every single person. What I want to know is how many of these people were anti-Semitic, right? Because there's always a debate as to when, look, I don't believe that just because you're anti-Israel or you're critical of Israel means you're anti-Semite.
I agree.
But there is a line to which, once you cross that line, you do walk into anti-Semitism.
Absolutely.
So I always like to see where that line is and get a gauge of whether that line should even be adjusted from my own point of view. What I found was shocking was that pretty much everybody I spoke to had some level of anti-Semitic feelings, whether it be they feel that, or spoke to an anti-Semitic trope, whether it be, do Jews control the economy? Yes. Do Jews control governments? Yes. Do Jews control and initiate wars? Yes. Really disgusting, terrible anti-Semitic lies and tropes that we've been dealing with, and really we felt the ramifications, unfortunately, and deadly sometimes, throughout our history. And it was bad. And the coup de grace was the last night. There was the main entertainment for the night was a Palestinian rapper named Tamir Nafar, who's actually Israeli, but he identifies as Palestinian. And he got up there and just opened up this openly anti-Semitic rap songs and songs.
It was horrible.
And
I actually saw it.
Yeah.
yeah, it was almost unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Almost unbelievable. But worse than that wasn't just the fact that he was an anti-Semite openly singing about anti-Semitic things. Everybody was singing along with him. They were clapping. And these were not. These are not all. In fact, the majority of them were not Palestinians or Arabs or Muslims. The majority of them were white Americans, Black Americans, professors, administrators.
Oh, we are frozen.
It was shocking. And thank God I got the footage. So when the video came out, it kind of exploded very quickly. And it started to be covering by the New York Times and the Washington Post. And what happened, and the way this kind of happened is so interesting, was first a congressperson from North Carolina, his district, reached out to the Department of Education and said, this is funded, because I said in my video, this was funded by our taxpayer dollars, $250,000. So he reached out to the Department of Education and said, this is crazy. What is going on here? How are we funding this? The DOE looked at it and said, well, this is true. We're spending our money. We have a problem here. They then researched it and then initiated a lawsuit against Duke and UNC. Duke and UNC settled out of court with the Department of Education. The DOE then went to the administration, the Trump administration, said, listen, we have an issue here because we need a mechanism to be, because we were lucky we settled out of court. We needed a mechanism to really win this in a court of law. So he asked the president, and I don't want to take all the credit for this, but for years, people were pushing and lobbying the Obama administration and the Trump administration to change Title IX, I think Title IX, to include anti-Semitism. And they got no traction from Obama, and frankly, no traction from the Trump administration. Right. This lawsuit, and if I'm going on too long, just cut me off.
No. I'm very right.
So this lawsuit and the DOE request is what got the president to actually initiate the executive order to change Title IX to include anti-Semitism. And I think I was there for the signing ceremony. I was really I'm very proud, one of my prouder moments, that I was able to affect real change that's going to actually have real world effect on how our kids going on campuses. I have a kid going on campus next year, what that environment will be like for him.
Absolutely, because, I followed the whole story. I followed it before with the Obama administrations, and, I'm involved with the World Jewish Congress and with the ISC, with Stand With Us. So I followed the whole thing. And when I saw what happened, I was so proud of you as a Jew and as an Israeli. It made a big difference.
Thank you.
Now, Ami, you have to tell us, so you went to the White House as a result of that. As a result of that precedent, you were invited to the White House for the signing of the bill?
Yes. Well, it was a Hanukkah party
right.
/ signing of the bill, correct.
All right, so tell us. We want to hear
the
scoop on this, on the White House. Who invited you? Jared? Did Jared invite you?
No. Somebody else invited me.
Okay. And so did you?
But thank God, in fact, it was actually my fourth White House trip in the last year. I've had a lot of access, thank God, and I've got a good relationship with the administration, and it's always a trip. It never gets old. I mean, I haven't done that many times, but it hasn't gotten old yet. It's still super exciting and very moving.
Of course.
The Hanukkah party is like, the east room of the White House, the east part of the White House is just all decked out. It's gorgeous. I posted on Facebook. It's really it's a magical experience. The food's great, which is really important. The drinks are flowing, good alcohol.
Karen, that's what you told me you're going to ask. The first thing that Karen told me is I'm going to ask him, what did they serve you?
I'd love to go over the menu because it was so good. Lamb chops and the schnitzel. It was great. It was wonderful food.
So who did you meet? Did you get to actually meet the president?
I did not actually. I didn't speak with him or meet with him, but obviously I was in the room with him. I met a lot of the usual suspects. Jared, Ivanka among them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So your groundbreaking and informative short videos have literally changed Swedish immigration policy and U.S. trade policy. You've traveled with Syrian immigrants across the Asian Sea in a rickety raft. You were shelled by Ivorian rebels, and you have been featured in every major publication in the world. Your film, You and Me, exposed the shady UN practices. What really motivated you to quit your work as an investment banker, which is very lucrative, in order to make these documentaries? Because this is, you had a great job as an investment banker. You could be sitting in a nice air-conditioned building, and here you are risking your life. I mean, you were almost kidnapped in Sweden, and you actually got hurt in Sweden.
Yeah. To be fair, even with the salary of a filmmaker, still thank God of America, we have a lot of air conditioned rooms. So I do have that going for me. But it puzzles me to this day why I made that switch. I don't fully comprehend why I did it or fully understand it, because looking back on it now, it was a pretty major risk, right? I mean, I left a great job with a great salary, able to take care of my family without any issues, and had literally no experience in filmmaking, zero. I mean, nothing. I grew up in Los Angeles. That's as close as I got to filmmaking.
Right.
So I can't tell you exactly what was the trigger. I mean, I know the moment where I decided to do it, which was, it was a Saturday night, and I was watching a Michael Moore movie, Bowling for Columbine. And at the same time, started thinking about the United Nations, and was getting really upset about, how the UN really kind of screwed the pooch on the world and has really failed to live up to any of its founding principles. And I looked over at the screen and I saw this Michael Moore documentary. And I thought to myself, this is a really entertaining, engaging way to get a point across. And I thought, I feel I just had this urge. Life is oftentimes broken into this binary of things you can't afford to do and things you can't afford not to do. And the trick in life is to figure out which one is which, because in the moment you're not sure. But I knew this was something I could not afford not to do. I couldn't afford not to do this. So I very quickly decided to leave my work, start raising money, and make this movie at the UN. And I never looked back. It's been a wild ride. It's been I've actually been doing this longer than investment banking at this point, which is
Wow.
More.
I have to ask you, You and Me was excellent. I liked the movie a lot. As I follow the UN work all the time because of Israel. But do you think a film like You and Me, like when I watched it, I saw it, I knew all along that the UN is doing what the UN is doing, and they're kind of useless in my opinion. But do you think it affected people that are not like necessarily pro-Israel, or do you think I know it made a change for when I watched it. I showed it to people that I really wanted, that we always argued politics. I showed them the film. Do you think it came across to other people that kind of like very pro the UN and didn't see what they were doing? Do you think you got the message across to those people?
I do, because if you just read the reviews in the New York Times, the LA Times, Chicago Sun-Times, Washington Post, these are people who are, let's be frank, left of center, people who have very positive views of the UN. And if you read their reviews, they say, look, this was, this opened my eyes on X or Y or Z. In fact, I remember one, I can't remember which publication it was, but one significant publication, it was Politico, can't remember. But I still remember what he said. He said, it's very rare where somebody can shift my worldview. And this movie did it. And I'll never forget that, because it was such a powerful thing. Because it's hard, look, especially when you're older, you've had these views for your whole life. It's very difficult to shift those views, right? And for somebody to say that they've shifted their entire worldview based on this was very powerful for me. And that's kind of the point of what I do is, if I was just, there's a role to preach to the choir. When people say preaching to the choir, it's now thought of as a pejorative, like it's a waste of your time. It's not true. Preaching to the choir has a role. And my good friend Dennis Prager says, we all have to be singing off the same hymn book. If we're not, then we're not getting anywhere. So you do want to preach to the choir to a certain extent. That's not what I want to do. Other people do that better than I. It's not my role. My role is to change people's opinions. My role is to bring people obviously people on the far left are far gone. I'm not convinced them. I can't engage them. It's pointless. The people who are left of center and center are absolute targets for what I do. I've got, thank God, a significant Facebook following. I've got over 1 million Facebook fans. And a third of that group, a third of my fan base are center or left of center. And I think that's a huge win. And if you read kind of the people's comments to me on Facebook or on Twitter or on YouTube, every day I'll get a comment from something like, hey, I didn't think this going in, and you've changed my point of view on it. So nothing can make me happier than I'll read those comments.
But I'll tell you why, because when I watched your videos, I tend to be more to the right, especially when it comes to Israel. But you know what I liked about your videos is that you show both sides. When they ask you questions, a lot of reporters want to bring their point across at all costs. And you are very fair, you're very honest, very truthful. And when something didn't add up, you said it doesn't add. So I like that about you, that you're very fair, you're right in the middle, and you show all the points. And I think that's why people listen to your videos.
Yeah, look, to be fair, truthful is the #1 value when it comes to these videos. But I have a point of view. I come across the point of view. Sometimes it's funny. When people watch, You and Me is a good example. When people watch that movie, people on the right thought it was a right-wing movie, and people on the left actually thought it was a liberal movie.
Right.
So that's exactly the kind of reaction that I want. But no, you don't have to stack the deck, because generally I'm right. So, and it comes down to videos. I don't have to stack the deck in my favor.
How did you?
I wanted to get back actually to a comment we left before. We were talking about Israel and campuses. And it's an important point, because you asked, what do we have to do? What's the future? What do we have to do to change the
That's very important.
On the ground? And the truth is, I lay a lot of the blame on what's happening on campuses, not on the Islamic radicals on campus, not on the left on campus, not even the professors or the administration. A lot of the blame, unfortunately, I put on the shoulders of the pro-Israel parents, because they don't do the work.
I agree.
To arm their children on their values and how to defend their values. And they go there and they look at me and they say, I don't know what happened. My daughter became a leftist. It's your fault. You didn't spend the time that's necessary, the work that's necessary to give your child a real academic and intellectual grounding on why you need to defend your viewpoint. And I always tell them, you have to look in the mirror on this one.
And you know what? I have family members that were very much to the right, and they went to university, and just like you said, they became left. And one of the reasons I took, especially my middle daughter, but the older one was more with Israelis, it was easier. But the middle daughter, I got her involved with Stand With Us and everything. So now I think she's very well. And even now there is a 3-hour series, or 3 series of 2 hours actually, that the ISC is doing right now, preparing those kids to, even the kids that are very much like Zionists and they know all about Israel, and they went to the Israeli Scouts, they still they're going, now there is a series of 6 hours that are preparing them how to face what they're going to face in colleges, how to defend themselves, how to talk to the media, how to find answers for themselves. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
And that's not enough. Everybody, we all see, it has to be from the parents on a weekly, daily basis. It's not something that you can watch a movie and say, oh, now I know, now I can defend it. Right. Or even go for a week. It's something that has to come ground roots from the parents all the time.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Ami, I'm going to quote you right now. Are you ready for the quote?
I love when people quote me, especially when it makes me look bad. That's my favorite.
Actually, it's good. It's good, I think. I think it was in Authority magazine. I'm quoting you. We should be proud as a country that women are more successful now than they've ever been. With 58% of university students are women, and there are more female CEOs than ever before. I'm confident this upward trend will continue, and of course, we're better off as a society because of it. Obviously, Ami, you know, 500 out of 535 Congress members, only 127 are women. 100 members of the Senate, only 26 are women. And out of 435 House of Representative members, are only 101 are women. It's about 25%. Clearly, I think your next documentary should be covering this topic. Are you interested, Ami? I'll help you.
No, I'm definitely not interested. I want to stay away from that issue as far away as I can. It'll only get me in trouble.
It's all right.
You know,
So I want to ask you,
yeah.
with even Fortune 500, only 24 of the 24%, no, 24 women are CEOs of Fortune 500. So when obviously you see when it comes to representing the people, we are less than 25%. Why do you think that is, and how do you think we can change it?
So again, my background is investment banking. My background is investment banking. And there are very few female investment bankers, particularly on the higher end. And people have always asked, why is that? Is it anti-feminist? Is it, you know, it's a boys' club? And the reality is not really that. The reality is there are certain jobs with certain demands, and women oftentimes, it's not that women are being pushed out. Women have to make a decision, okay? And it's a hard decision, okay? And the decision is oftentimes, do I want to pursue this path? And in case of investment banking, which requires 6-7 days a week, requires, you know, sometimes 14, 15 hours a day, literally, and a ton of travel. And with that comes sacrifice. Not just women, men make the same sacrifices. Men, when men pursue this course, it comes at a cost of your family, more so with a woman. And they oftentimes, women make, it's not for me to say whether it's a wise decision or not, I have my opinion on it, but women oftentimes make the decision, no, I choose to not pursue that course and spend more time with my family. And I think families are better off for it, okay? I don't think that's even debatable, but that is the decision that one has to make. I think a lot of that could be extended into areas that you had mentioned, particularly being a CEO, which is also an incredibly demanding job. And do I think we're better off to have more women CEOs? Sure, I think we would be. More female politicians, absolutely. But we got to be careful not to fall into the trap that many in Europe have fallen into, where we start demanding that women have certain positions. Because when you start doing that, the entire system begins to crack a little bit, especially in our free market system where people have to make choices. So obviously I support the decision of a woman to go in either direction, but at the end of the day, it's their decision to do that. And if you ask me the same question 50 years ago, I would answer it differently, saying actually there are impediments for women to have these positions and jobs. And one has to understand that today we're not where we were 50 years ago. Do we have ways to go? Maybe a little bit, but not that much. The truth is, if you look at colleges, women dominate universities. There are more women than men in universities. They just make different decisions in life after that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So you think it's the decision of the woman? So you don't think it's because of the men dominance in the fields? You really think that if women put the same amount of time and they made those decisions, there would be more women?
I do.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's 100% that, and that there isn't some kind of obstacles.
Right.
Okay? There's obstacles for everybody in life. I had obstacles growing up. I didn't have all the advantages a lot of people have. I didn't grow up rich. I grew up solidly middle class, okay? And everything I had in my life, nothing was handed to me. I fought for all of it. Everybody has obstacles to overcome. And I'll tell you something else. I have this mantra that I believe that you become what you overcome. And in fact, I think the more obstacles in front of you, the more, if you're able to get past them, you are far better equipped to deal with issues going forward than people who had less obstacles in front of them. I remember I gave a speech. I was blessed to give a speech this past summer to the Urban League, the largest Black organization in the country. And I gave the keynote address, and I share the stage with Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris. So it was an amazing experience. I remember giving this speech to 5,000 Black leaders. And I struggled with what does this Jewish guy come up with that could say something and speak to them, right? What do I have to share with them? And I thought, actually, I have a lot to share with them. And I drew on the obstacles that Jews had, right? Were there obstacles that Jews had when we first came to this country? I would argue Jews had more obstacles when they came to this country then than Black people have today. Okay, I don't think there's any question about it. But we were able to overcome, and like I said, the obstacles are our DNA is suffused and with the amount of obstacles we've overcome in our lives, and we've become what we've overcome. I believe that falls for everybody.
Well, you're amazing. You've overcome a lot. You're very successful, and we enjoy all your YouTube videos. Can you share with us some of your scariest moments and in your career, and what has been like your funniest moments?
My wife hates when I tell these stories. But
I was going to ask you about your wife letting you do this job.
Yeah.
We're not going to go there, right?
He hates that question, by the way.
Right.
So there's a lot of scary ones. I'll tell you that. One that I haven't talked about a lot of the stories that have been said, but it was during filming of You and Me, and we were in Cote d'Ivoire, West Africa, and we had an interview with the president of Cote d'Ivoire, and the president of Cote d'Ivoire was in the middle of a civil war when we got there, and the president wanted to have his palace. He's a Dafka kind of guy, and he wanted to have his palace in the middle of the rebel-held territory. Okay, that's where he had his palace. So in order to go interview him, he wanted us to go there, which was, I don't know, 200 miles through the jungle of rebel-held territory. And we're driving, along this this hand-cut, road, not a highway, a road through the jungle, and where the cars bouncing. We're in this convoy, this military convoy, and I'm in some old beat-up sedan, and we're bouncing around in the ruts of this thing, and all of a sudden we hear explosions. What the hell's going on? And the guy goes, "We're being shelled." They found just we're being shelled. And we immediately had to drive off inside the jungle. We're sitting there. We're waiting for the shelling is hitting. I can't tell how close it is. I can't tell the next shell is going to explode into our car. You have no idea. You're sitting there in fear, not knowing what's going to happen 5 seconds from now as the shells are hitting. And I remember my drivers were sitting there, and they said they tell me a story how they said, "My friend, he drove through the jungle last week. And we caught him, and they slaughtered him to the gods." And I'm like, "Dude, why are you laughing? That sounds horrible. Your friend was killed." He goes, "He's not my friend anymore." I'm like, "We're screwed. We are totally screwed."
Who sponsors your travel?
I have investors. I raise money for these projects, and those guys are able. And I salute them. Look, all that I do cannot, because it's expensive what I do. It requires a tremendous amount of travel, large amounts of crew, and they're expensive endeavors for most of these things that I do. And without my investors, without my contributors, none of this is possible. Without people being able to step up and say, "Hey, I want to help fund this stuff," I wouldn't be able to do it, because it's a lot of money.
When you're away, how long do you generally go for when you're out?
Oh, I mean, it could be anywhere from 24 hours to 2 weeks. It all depends on where I'm going, what I'm shooting.
Ami, you're so lucky to have your wife. Karen, can you imagine if Shaul or Joseph came to us and said, I want to do a You and Me movie, or I'm going to go to some jungle. Sharon is waving, no.
You ever, we love you and we're the presidents of your fan club, but do you ever get hate mail out of curiosity?
Is that a serious question?
Yeah.
Yes, I get a lot of hate mail.
A
lot of hate mail, some death threats. Sure, I get them all.
Wow.
Wow.
Against all.
I mean, most recently, the Democratic Party, I think, truly failed Israel, especially last year when many boycotted AIPAC and did not show for the conference. As a matter of fact, not a single presidential Democratic candidate spoke at last year's AIPAC conference, which I think was one of the lowest points between the party and Israel. Just so our followers will know, I'm not taking I'm not Republican or Democrat position. I was just upset. I would be just as upset if a Republican took that position. I don't think that not showing up is the right thing to do, even if you don't agree with everything that is going on at that time. What do you think caused that rift, and is there any way back, you think?
Can they repair it?
Because it's I think getting worse with time.
Yeah, this is one of the great shames. Politicized. And I hate to break the news to people who think that Trump has politicized Israel, but this is just simply not the case. The Democratic Party has moved decisively to the left politically in general. What goes along with moving to the left, what goes hand in hand with that is being anti-Israel, okay? It's just the nature of what it is to be left. And I don't want to get into a whole discussion on why that is, but I can if you want to, but it's a whole deep psychological thing on what makes somebody a leftist and why the values of Israel, the democratic values of Israel, do not comport with being a leftist.
Right.
When I say leftist, I don't mean a liberal. I don't mean left of center. There's a distinction between the two. A leftist is somebody who really believes in the ideals of the left. And if you look at the playbook is, we don't have to guess in the direction the Democratic Party is going in. All we have to do, we can see into the future. How do we do that? We look at Europe. Look at England. England is a glimpse of what the Democratic Party is going to be if they continue down this road.
I agree.
And it used to be when Corbyn was, in fact, the leader of the party, it was called the Corbynization of the Democratic Party. That's, maybe the word doesn't work, but the concept still holds true. And the Democratic Party and their embrace, not their toleration, their embrace of anti-Semites like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, okay? Their embrace of them is setting the stage for the Democrats to be the party of the anti-Semites. The party, they're already the party of anti-Israel. And don't get me, I know there are Democrats who are strong supporters of Israel. I know them, I met them, and there's a lot of them, okay? Maybe even a majority of them, maybe. But I would not have made that comment 10 years ago, maybe the majority. 10 years ago, clearly they were a majority. And 20 years more than that. But the tide has shifted significantly. And even the people who were, look, Joe Biden was always pro-Israel, okay? You can already see the cracks in that facade. This is a problem, and this is a massive problem. I don't want Israel to be the domain of the Republicans. I don't want it to be the domain of the Democrats. And need Israel, in order to have a strong relationship with America, it has to be both of them. But I'm afraid it's going to be hard to turn. It's not impossible, but at this point, it's not something we can turn in a year or two. Unfortunately, it's generational. It'll take a generation at least.
Right. Because AIPAC was always both Republican and Democrat, that both parties come. And it was, and I see it, and with every year, because I go to AIPAC every year, it's getting worse and worse every year. So it's.
And that's where you can see an erosion in AIPAC's heft. It was always thought that AIPAC is so powerful. The reality is AIPAC is as powerful as its friends in Congress will let it be powerful. As long as they have friends, supporters in Congress, they're very powerful. But now that you see, look, when AIPAC tried to stop Barack Obama with the Iran deal, they spent, I don't know, millions of dollars, right? Unbelievable amounts of effort, and they could not do it. Because the reality is, when a president is set on an issue, there's nothing AIPAC can do, absolutely nothing. And that the work had to have been done with Barack Obama before he became president. And they did some work, obviously, with that. But Barack Obama had an agenda on Israel, and he wasn't going to deviate from it.
So how do you...
up until his last thing that he did when he kicked Israel under the bus at the UN, one of the last things he was president.
The last right. I have to ask you though, if we don't fix it, it's kind of scary. As an Israeli, I'm very scared, Israeli American, because if the Republicans win, it's great, but I'm very scared for the relationship if the Democrats end up winning. What do you think will happen if they end up winning? Do you think
In this particular election,
in this particular election?
nothing good.
Nothing good.
Nothing that can't be reversed. The relationship with Israel and the United States is very, very deep. And it goes way beyond surface politics. It's cultural, it's economic, it's with the military, right? The military has a deep, deep relationship with Israel that can't be reversed by one or two terms of a president. It can be damaged, and it was damaged during Barack Obama. Barack Obama did his best to damage it, but that relationship is still extraordinarily strong, if not as strong as ever. Having said that, you already see Israel doing things that to me are very worrying. And one of the worries that I see is I think a huge mistake. And that the Israelis are making a calculation that we don't know how long the United States is going to help us. And we have to now spread our relationships a little bit more beyond the United States and its borders. And the natural person they're turning to is China, which is a counterweight to the United States. I think it's a massive mistake on a whole bunch of levels. Netanyahu's making this mistake. Everybody who's looking to China to have a deeper relationship is making a massive mistake. But that is part of the cost that we're seeing in this erosion of support in the Democratic Party. Because they're concerned, rightly so, they're concerned. It's a mistake to make that move, but they're concerned.
Wow. I want to ask you, are you familiar with Stand With Us and the ISC?
Yeah, I know ISIS. That's not like the same as ISE?
No, IAC.
ISC, the Israeli American Council?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. I
And of
would
course,
love, I know Nati, you probably heard of Nati Seidov and Adam Milstein. I would love, if you agree, I'm very involved with both organizations, and we would love to, Karen and I are both very involved. I know a lot of the people personally. I'm one of the supporters. I would love to invite you to one of the conferences to be a keynote speaker. Would you be interested?
I never make a request for these kind of things. I never reach out, but if they, of course, I'd be thrilled to.
It would be an honor to have somebody like you speak at those conferences, because really, Ami, I meet a lot of people because I'm very, I'm an activist myself, but I don't do it full time like you. But not a lot of people interest me, and I've been following your work for years, and I never get bored of it. And now my father is hooked on your work. So
very sweet. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So,
very sweet.
Thank you, Ami. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are smart, knowledgeable, and very courageous activist who made it his life's mission to stand against social injustices. With anti-Semitism on the rise, we need to have more people like you to expose the truth and hopefully get the attention of policy and lawmakers. We'd like to thank all of our supporters for listening to this episode. Please remember, you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Yentas in the City. You could also write us at dearyentas@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you and answer your letters on our weekly advice column. We'd also like to thank our team, Frank and Sharon, for all the behind-the-scenes work in helping to bring this episode together. And lastly, we would like to thank our sponsors, Soft Smart Systems International and Conquest Realty Investments. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We have a lot more coming. Until next time, this is Karen Cohen and Eti Elkis, and we are Yentas in the City.
thank you, Ami.
It's a pleasure.